Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are in North America. And it could be evening if you're some of our friends in Australia, New Zealand, China. This is Tim Selden. I'm president of the Montessori Foundation. We are the primary Montessori nonprofit school consulting, coaching, mentoring group. We work to help schools solve problems. We speak more than Montessori. So if you happen to be a parochial school or a faith-based school or an independent school, we understand your world too. And this is finding the perfect match, recruit and retain your ideal enrollment. With me is my co-host, Clint Lausch, who is the founder and CEO of Ames, a wonderful independent school marketing company. Clint, let me hand it over to you for a minute.
Yeah, appreciate it, Tim. Thanks everybody for joining us today. And as somebody who's been in the marketing world, agency world, and now in the software world of providing schools with marketing and admission software, I think the number one thing that I talk about with schools many times is how do we get more tours, right? So I'm usually on the front lines of helping schools get more tours. And they might be individual tours, they might be group tours or event registrations, open houses. And I feel like more than ever right now, the schools are doing a lot of different things to bring in families. Some schools love open houses and that's their main driver. Some schools are like, open houses never work. Some schools do info sessions or virtual. And I think I'm really excited for today's session, um, and hearing Tim's thoughts about, okay, we get them to these events, but what are the ideal events? What should happen in those events so that we can increase that conversion rate after the event to get families to apply and ultimately enroll? So this is such an important topic, as we're sitting here in the beginning of August, and our minds are starting to go to those October and November events, and maybe some of you are having September events. About what should those events be? Should they be tours or open houses or group or individual? And what should happen there? So Tim, I'm excited to kind of follow your lead here and chime in when I can, at least from the marketing perspective, about um, these events that can be and should be huge enrollment drivers. So
Great.
yeah, Tim, I'm looking
Well,
forward to it.
again, I think there's no wrong way to do it. My story is that when I started in this work, I used to see every family in our school one-on-one. And I discovered for the first 2 years that I was head of school, pretty much that's all I could do during the day, because if you're having any kind of if you're having any kind of significant demand, you may be seeing 10 to 20 people a week throughout the school year. And that is a full-time job if you're dealing with people who are just trying to figure out, do they even like you? Do they want to ask you out on a date? So the bottom line is there is no one answer. You're going to do what works for your school, whatever you're used to. But what I found is several different things, and I'll talk about this more later. The first is, from my experience, people that go to an independent school, whether you're a faith-based school, whether you're a large prep school, a boarding school, Montessori school, preschool, people want to know the head of school. And that doesn't mean they always get to know the head of school. It's just, it really makes a profound impact on people. The head of school is like the rabbi or the minister, the pastor. They're the talent, they're the candidate. And so while there are many, many people involved with making an independent school work, the reality is one of the key people that you want the family to get to know and bond with is the head of school. For that reason, because we have so many things to do, I personally have a prejudice towards trying to see as many people as possible in groups, and I'll talk more about it. But the bottom line is, in my mind, there are 3 steps in admissions. The first is get the right people to call you and answer the phone quickly, and you know take the next step was get them on campus. So you want to get them on campus, then what do you do with them when you got them on campus? That's what today's talk is. When you get them on campus, then you want to figure out, are you right for each other? And if so, recognizing there are many, many schools competing for every family's time, dollars, attention, love, commitment. We want to help them to fall in love with you if you're the right match and get them to actually go through the whole admissions process and, if offered admissions, accept it and love you for the rest of their child's education. That's the goal. So most families decide emotionally, and it's not a rational decision. There's a saying that $1 million gift or the purchase of a big boat is not a rational decision. It's something you really want. It's something you feel strongly about. It's probably not very good business sense, but you do it. And I think going to an independent school is very much a decision of the heart for most families. That means that the visit is your first chance to win over their heart. Now, in this case, it says to make the Montessori difference real. You may be a Montessori school, you may be not. If you've been here before, you know that what we always say is clarity is the key to success. You got to figure out who are you. You want to figure out how do you help parents to know what makes your individual school incredible and help them to separate it from all the other options that are out there, whether they're Montessori schools or monastery schools or public school, whatever. We want them to fall in love with your school if you're the right fit for them. The third thing is this process is emotional. So it's not just what they see. Stop worrying about how many acres you've got and your buses and your horseback riding program and your library and your science lab or your makerspace. It's about what emotions do they feel when they walk onto that campus, during their visit to the campus, when they leave the campus. Do you literally melt their heart? Now, there are three ways that schools typically do this. One is they do one-on-one tours, and they have some advantages. They're very personalized. It's about you and that one family. They're flexible. They're flexible in the sense that the family picks a time that works for them and works for you. And they are also at the same time very time intensive. There are other disadvantages, but that's the biggest one, is that if you're going to do one-on-one tours and you're seeing 10 people or more a week, then of your 40 to 60-hour work week, you're probably putting in somewhere between 10 and 20 hours a week, just making the first preliminary visits with someone who's trying to figure out, is this a school that I'm going to love? I would rather do that in a group for a lot of reasons, which I'll talk about. The next thing you can do is what many, many schools do. They have special open houses. In fact, many people don't even call what I do an open house. They call it a tour or an on-site visit. But a large group open house is typically held at night after school, or they're held on a weekend. Maybe you have your teachers there. Typically, you do 1, 2, or 3 a year. They are not the kind of thing that is going on every single week. And then what I used to do and was doing as recently as a year ago before I retired was weekly group tours. I'm a great believer in that. These group tours are basically done typically at the same time every week, like Tuesday morning at 9:30. You definitely want to know who's coming, but if people just drop in, they know that every Tuesday you're going to be there at the same time, and they can come in and they can register, and they get an enrollment packet and they come along with you. It's important to understand that when I say an open house, I don't mean to imply that this is come in anytime between 9:30 and 10:30. It is a very disciplined, organized program. You're going to see people arriving late. That's pretty normal. Some of them are going to come with their mother-in-law. Some of them are going to come alone. Some of them are going to come with 2 kids in a baby carriage. You're going to see it all. And so you need to be organized to be able to handle whatever you get. The Newgate School was not anywhere near the size of the Barry School. The Barry School, which is still running today in Silver Spring, Maryland, had an office that was about 1,000 square feet or bigger. We could accommodate easily 30 people in there sitting. Um, we normally expected that twice a week we would have 10 to 15 adults plus whatever children arrived. So we were seeing a fair number of people twice a week, every week of the school year, for the most part. There are a couple of weeks of the year that we wouldn't even bother holding. Like during the winter break, we would say, let's not do it now. And by the way, if you're doing these weekly open houses, you've got to have a disciplined structure so that people know what they're signing up to and what to expect and how long they'll last. And they have to have the ability to request a private tour if that's what they want. There's no reason why a school can't do all three. You can do these weekend or evening open houses if that's what you want to do. You can have the weekly Tuesday drop-ins or open house, like I call them. And you can do individual tours if people request it. You could structure through someone like Ames, which, by the way, is a software that specializes in making this easy. You could say, give the parent a choice. Would they like to just learn more? Would they like to set up an individual tour or a group tour or come to a special event tour? So again, the one-on-one has the pro that they are tailored to the family, and the con is that the one-on-one individual tour is very, very demanding of your time. And most schools that do that have or have to have a full-time admissions director who does nothing but deal with meeting with parents. And again, I think that's perfectly normal. Most of us have someone helping us at admissions because there's a lot of records to collect, a lot of follow-up. You know, you're going to be doing tours and testing and all kinds of things are going to happen. And so as a head of school, you're probably going to need help. But I personally believe I want to be the first face they see when they get to the campus. And I want to be the person taking them around. The second option is the group open houses, or rather the large group open houses, and they're very efficient. I mean, you can have 50 to 100 people if there's enough demand. However, they're not very intimate at all. They're very impersonal. You get large numbers of people. It's like on like a book sale or something like that. It's very large numbers of people wandering around your campus. A lot of motion, a lot of people running around. Not, in my opinion, the best way to meet people and get to know them and start to figure out, are you going to be a great match? And then there's the weekly tours that I'm talking about. And they have the advantage of being incredibly authentic. They're rather efficient. However, they do need planning. So you need to figure out what tour format or formats you want to use. So you want to figure out, do you have the capacity to support personalized one-on-one tours? Some people do, and some people can't even imagine anything but it also, if you're running a one-man or one-woman shop, that could be a challenging problem. It may be very hard to have enough time to see people individually unless you're getting a very low number of prospects. In my opinion, you want to see about 15 to 20 people a week. So again, if you think about it, that is a serious portion of most people's day. And that's the reason why I like these group tours, at least for the first visit. The second thing is you got to figure out if large open houses will be the right fit for your school. For a lot of schools, that's exactly how they do it, and it works. Um, Large private schools that get large numbers of people applying, only a small fraction of whom are going to get in. This may be exactly the way to do it. And then consider offering the weekly or twice a week group tours that are on a regularly scheduled basis, um, which I think is, in my opinion, the way to go. So the weekly group tours, they're held during the school day. And among other things, you're going to take your visitors into a classroom or into multiple classrooms. They normally will run for about 90 to 120 minutes. Typically, you start with getting to know each other, introducing yourselves, brief, who are we? What's our school all about? The snapshot view, explanation of what people are going to do during the event. And then having done that and had the initial conversation about, who's in the room, who are these kids that are here, how old are they, where are they at school now, that kind of stuff. We usually begin to go out into the field, and a lot of the questions are asked as we're wandering around the campus. The other advantage of the weekly tour is they tend to feel very relaxed, they tend to feel very authentic, and they tend to be very immersive. They're a very, very powerful way of introducing parents to your school and, frankly, of getting them to apply. Now, the individual tours allow for deeper one-on-one conversations. You're not going to do that in a large group open house. You're not going to do that even in those group tours that I did. I mean, you may have some people telling something about their story, but they're going to want to do that in private normally. Individual tours are very time intensive for you and your staff. On the other hand, they are very personalized and they are very flexible. Those are the pros. The group tours are very high visibility. You get a lot of attendance, ideally. I mean, I've had a lot of these things where I was hoping for 50 people and 5 showed up. But, there is the advantage that if you get 20, 30 people on your campus at the same time, you're probably going to make a pretty big statement to the visitor that there's a lot of people who are interested in sending their kids to your school. That's one reason why people do them. The momentum and exposure, it creates excitement. There's usually a lot of hullabaloo. There's kids typically there taking people around. There can be a lot of reasons why those events are fine. Very, very interesting for people. On the other hand, they are held typically only once, twice, 3 times, 4 times a year. A lot of work goes into putting them together, and the parent that you're interested in may or may not even know you're having one until it's too late. So again, they're not as flexible, and there's not much of a personal engagement. They're not intimate at all. So the small group tours tend to give families a structured opportunity to visit, to learn about Montessori or whatever kind of school you're running, and to feel like they really got a sense of what the real school's like. The live classroom visiting is very important. In Montessori schools, it's common to have chairs that are set up in the classroom all the time for visitors to sit in. You can do this in many different ways, including, going in and standing at the side of the room. Those of you who are Montessori educators have probably seen pictures of Dr. Montessori in a classroom standing at the side of the room with 2 or 3 adults. That's pretty much what I'm doing. You also want to realize that you're going to get some very interactive question and answer sessions and that kind of small group tours. And a lot of people really enjoy it, and they learn so much from listening to what the other people ask and how you respond to them. So again, the small group tends, in my opinion, to be one of the most powerful ways to handle this whole thing. So you want to have the visit be as memorable as you possibly can. You want to create an incredibly welcoming atmosphere, beautiful place for people to gather. Want the room that they're in initially to be very comfortable and clean, brightly lit. It's got to reflect the values of your school. You want to engage people with interactive activities. One thing you can do is have toys and games that young kids enjoy if they're there, so that you don't have 2, 3, 4-year-olds that are basically bored out of their skulls while the adults are talking. And you want to have some really nice way of conducting it and wrapping it up. So a good way to close it, for example, is, you may go back to the office, or you may be finished with what you're going to do on campus, and you say, well, that's about it. Before we go back to the office, I want to make sure you all have a copy of our brochure and that you've got a copy of my card, and you understand that this is only the first date. Feel free to call us anytime, ask questions. You want to come back again, we're delighted to see you individually, or you can just drop in at one of these weekly open houses. If you want to come back with your spouse or your mother-in-law, please feel free. Again, you can either do an individual tour, or you can come back as part of the regular weekly tour that's at the same time every single week. So again, you want to begin with incredibly warm greeting, make people from the moment they hit the campus feel greeted, seen, honored, welcome, have coffee, refreshments. If they've got kids in their arms, have an environment where they can sit down, where their kids can play. And again, everyone feels comfortable. You want the tour to be incredibly engaging. You don't want to just talk at them. You want to ask them, what would you like to know? What are your questions? What brought you here? And again, you want to have the whole experience be a seamless experience, right down to the way of saying, we're so glad you came. Here's what the next steps are if you're interested. Let me stop and see if anyone's got any questions or thoughts before I go any further. Nobody jumping in. Okay, I'll keep going. So we want to create a memorable visit. And again, we're going to have the question and answers. We're going to have the walking around the campus and the visiting. And we want to have refreshments and a comfortable environment. And ideally, we've got to have a really clear agenda. I mean, your teachers have to know what's going on. No one can be surprised when you come wandering in with 5 or 10 parents in tow and maybe some young kids as well. You got a plan for it. So you've got your refreshments. You want everyone to be very comfortable. You want to introduce people to each other. You want to help people understand what's going to happen today, when they'll be able to leave, or if they can leave anytime. In other words, just make it really smooth. You probably want to have someone other than yourself be part of the typical open house. And that could be a student. On the other hand, in Montessori schools, quite often what we do is we train kids to come up to visitors, introduce themselves, and ask them if they'd like to sit and observe, or if they'd like some refreshments or whatever. So they'll quite often, kids will take over from us and take the parents around and give them lessons, and it works great. You may also have your admissions director, present parent or a past parent. It's all good. So among the people that I would ideally have at one of these things, and again, it depends on the size of your school and how many people you're likely to have. You're normally going to have the head of school. You will probably have the admissions director, who will be really helping with logistics and making sure that they know who came to the open house. There's no messing up with, oh my God, who was that showed up? You might have a teacher there who will talk about what it's like to work in these classrooms. You might have a parent there. You might have a student there, or a former student. These are all examples of what schools often do. So you want to greet every guest personally, get to know them, make sure that they have whatever literature you give out, make sure they get it. You want to set the tone with a really warm greeting. You want to give the context, and like, what's going to happen today, or how is this morning going to work, or what is Montessori, what's our school all about, whatever. And you want to share your unique story and your school culture. And again, it's not they're going to talk that much about your school, but you want to set them up to have a good feeling of, okay, this is all making sense. The reason why I talk about greeting every parent personally is I have seen schools where they'll say the open house is going to start, let's say at 9:30, and parents will start arriving 15 minutes early. No one comes out to talk to them. They just are allowed to sit there until 9:30. That's not what I have in mind. Ideally, we want to reach out, we want to engage these parents as soon as they hit the campus. The next thing is you want to think about the value of authentic engagement. What we're really trying to do is not sell them on our school. We're trying to help them understand who we are, what we're all about. We want to answer their questions, want them to get a strong sensory experience of what our school looks like, smells like, feels like. We want them to feel like they came away with a real behind the scenes look at who are you really. Remember, choosing a private school for your kid is an irrational emotional decision. So we're trying to give them lots of opportunity to fall in love with us if that's what's going to happen. We also want to give them permission to not fall in love with us if we're not the right fit for them. We want to build trust with the audience. We want to engage sincerely. We don't want to give them a song and dance. We don't want to make false promises. Again, we're not trying to get them to apply unless they do it. So here's what I typically would say. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourself in a minute, and I'll introduce myself as well. But I want you to know how this works. Today, the goal is to help you figure out who we are and what we're all about. And we don't want to convince you that you need to apply. Instead, what we want to do is to help you get a sense of who we are so you can begin to ask yourself, can I see my child blossoming at this school? Do I want to learn more? If you fall in love, then we really encourage you to apply. And if you don't fall in love, if you have any doubts, really encourage you either keep asking questions or come back again, or keep looking until you find a school where you do fall in love, because your child deserves it. She should have a school in which you have the highest level of confidence. So again, you're trying to create an incredible sense that you are worthy of trust as a school, as a person, and you're allowing them to decide for themselves, is this the right fit? Is this the perfect match? Now, obviously, parents have all kinds of different motivations when they look for a school. It could be they're worried about college admissions. It could be they're worried about athletics. It could be they're worried about bullying. It could be that they've got a child who gets bored. Whatever it is, you really want to help them figure out, are you the perfect match for them? So the other thing is you're really trying to prioritize meaningful communication between you and them and meaningful interactions between you and your visiting families and children. So inside the classroom, they're going to see some things. And, for example, in a Montessori school, these are some examples of things that you might do or that they might see. One would be the idea that they're going to see a lot of grace and courtesy. They're going to see children who tend to be focused and self-directed. They're going to see the multi-age groups. And they're going to see teachers who are not at the front of the classroom, who are quietly guiding and interceding with children, but not in the front of the room lecturing normally. So what do you say and what do you not say? For example, you might say, I invite you to notice how the children are choosing their work. Or I invite you to notice the calm and focused energy of this room. Or that we're helping children build their independence. What you want to avoid, whatever kind of school you've got, whether it's Montessori or something else, don't get into jargon. Don't give them more than they need to know. Now, obviously, there are bragging points. Like if you've got a 99% college admissions statistic, great. Then certainly you'd share that. Um, if you are a school that has incredible mental health and very little bullying, then you want to say, we're known as a place where children really feel safe and they feel at home. Think about what are the unique value propositions of your school. Now, we've done the tour. I don't care if it was an evening open house, a weekend open house, an individual tour, or one of these weekly group tours. It's over. What do you do? The first is you invite people to ask questions during the tour and after the tour. When you go home tonight, you may have more questions. It's perfectly normal. Please know you can call us anytime. Here's how to reach me. If you call, I want to listen, I want to help. We will try to answer any question we can. You want to come back again, please feel comfortable doing that. The next thing is you want to give them tangible takeaways because people don't remember. So they need a brochure, they need a folder, they need FAQs. I mean, of course, you're going to have this online, but people tend to need something that they can write on. So you may or may not have it. It's not the end of the world if you don't, but I just highly recommend invest in a good set of paper handouts that people take away with them. They look really good. The next thing is you want to follow up. You want to follow up with a personal email or a phone call or a text. There are a lot of ways to do it, but definitely follow up. And then you want to ask, can you see your child thriving here? In other words, what's your take? There's a lot of choices out there. Love to hear what your thoughts are in terms of the possibility of Newgate or Barry or whatever your school is, of it being the right fit for your school. What's your own take of are we the right fit? So we want to put it all together. We've got these steps. We've got an initial inquiry that comes in either by a phone call, a text, an email, filling out some kind of online form. Great. The next thing is there's a tour invitation and a scheduling. Then there's a visit. They come to the campus. Then there's a follow-up. And then hopefully there's an application. So some tips for success. You want to stick to a schedule, but you want to stay flexible. I mean, don't be shocked if you have a family that shows up 30 minutes late or even an hour late. So plan for it. It just happens. And don't make a big deal about it. Have a backup plan. If you're off in the campus and somebody shows up 30 minutes late, there ought to be someone around the office who can step in on an emergency basis. You want to keep your meeting as informal and comfortable as you can. You want to build trust with no pressure. You don't make a big deal about, application deadline is coming up this weekend. I mean, if it is, then you should tell them that. But generally speaking, we don't want to do that. And we just try to be the real people we are. So we want to ask you, what has worked best for your school? What do you do now? What do you like doing? What challenge are you facing getting families to visit? And how do you prepare your team? So I'm back. Diana, Kristen, anyone want to unmute and tell me what your thoughts are?
Hi, I'm Kristen. I think that, you know, I think all of those things are really important. I Giving tours, I think it's about the passion too. And I find that if you set them up for what you want them to see in the classroom, then it's more successful. So if I'm in a pre-primary classroom and say, watch them how they're having snack, and I want to look at that independence. And so then the individuals in the tour actually see that. Because sometimes it can be really overwhelming when you're walking into a Montessori classroom, there's all these kids doing all these things. So I try to point out, and I kind of gauge on the conversation I had previous. So I ask them, why do they come to a Montessori school? And they're like, independence. And like, so then I'll definitely point those things out. So kind of catering towards that group and what they've said previously, and then making them see those pieces when they walk into the classroom. Um, I also found a lot of success in relating it to their work life. So I give people the example of, a traditional classroom, someone's telling you when to move to the next subject or when to move to the next thing. In our professional life, we are not doing those things, right? Like you have tasks, you are really independent in how you do those tasks, you have deadlines. So I really make those relationships especially in the elementary classroom, how those children learn how to regulate themselves to meet deadlines, and how that is a big part of our work environment and how we're setting them up for success at a young age. So kind of relating it, because sometimes someone has no basis in Montessori has a hard time relating to, why is this beneficial for my child?
I think that I love the way you explained it, Kristen. The passion that many Montessori educators feel for their school and for the process of what's going on tends to be contagious for a lot of parents. It can also be off-putting, but it is often contagious. And it's the same thing that I find works in other schools. If the people running these tours and meeting with families really love their school, that speaks enormously. If you're a Quaker school or whatever, if you believe in it passionately, it tends to inspire confidence in the visiting parent. And again,
Yeah.
you never know what they're looking for, but that's a good model. Kristen, in your case, do you see them in groups or do you see them one-on-one?
We've done similar to what you've done, where like we had consistent tour dates and times so people could sign up. We do ask them to come without their kids. We do have contingency plans if they bring their children. I think all those things are important. But then we've done open houses in large groups. Um, I think you're right on the spot as far as the benefits of one versus the other. Um, and then we've also not done tours the first several weeks of school to help the children get normalized, so we say, in the, give them space without adults in there. And if we do give tours, then I let them know we will be giving you a tour, but we will be staying outside the classroom so that we're not disrupting that beginning few weeks.
Sure. I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah.
Diane, anything you want to share, Larissa?
Hey, this is
Really?
Diana.
Hi, Diana.
How are you? So we've tried like small groups and we've tried large group and it hasn't really worked. So what's worked best for us is the private tours. Seems like the demographics where our school is at, the people that come in want my undivided attention.
Mhm.
So I generally start the tour with asking them, what they know about Montessori, what drew them to the school, what their child is like, to kind of get an idea. All my teachers know when I'm going to have tours, and so I prepare them at our meetings on, how I want them to react when parents come in. I want them to, have a friendly face and acknowledge that they're there, but they don't have to stop what they're doing and come and talk to the parents because that's what my job is. And then I kind of gauge what I do on the tour based on their body language, what kind of questions they're asking. And I do take them through the entire school, even if they're just in for toddler. I show them where their toddler is going to move to into primary. I try to point out different things that are happening in the classroom that might look odd to somebody who's never been to a Montessori school and only been to traditional schools. And then I generally talk about what makes us different than the other Montessori schools and the other preschools and kindergartens in the area. And I just keep it open for them to ask any questions. I invite them to walk around the classrooms and look at what the children are doing. And I show them the inside and the outside of the building, what we do on the playground. And then when I bring them back through, they always have a packet with information about the school. I have a little thing that compares Montessori and traditional. And then I always make sure they have my card and know that they could reach out to me anytime, that I'm happy to answer any questions. If they want to come back, they're welcome to come back. And I always tell them, don't feel, ask me anything, ask me any question that comes to your mind, because this is your child and you have to feel secure. So I don't want anybody to ever feel like there's a stupid question.
Yeah, beautiful. So we've got 2 Montessorians online in addition to myself. Clint, sorry, you're outnumbered today. Hi,
I'm
Larissa.
Hi, I was just going to say I'm with Clint and I am with a private independent school. And we're a very small school, and we have also found that it's best for us to do the one-on-one sessions with families and really just try and tailor it to them as well. I wish at times that we could do groups because it does take a lot of our time. But I really do feel like for us, it works best. So,
Yeah,
and we do, oops, go ahead.
no, go ahead. I was just acknowledging what you're saying.
Sure. Um, and I also do, I show them the whole school regardless of what age they're looking at. We are a pre-kindergarten through 8th grade school. So yeah, I do a lot of things that everybody has said, and nothing too unique from anybody either. But thank you for this. This was really, really helpful.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope you'll come back, because every week we have topics that we think are spot on, useful to people. A lot of things are much more granular than usually we get. And that's the beauty of what the foundation can do, is we can have a whole webinar series, not just an individual webinar, but a series where all we do is look at recruiting families, building community, dealing with contract issues, you name it, money, lawsuits, you know, special events, getting people to stay through graduation when they want to leave at the beginning of 5th grade, when the other kids are going to middle school, all those crazy things that happen. How do you get people to come?
I had a question. What do you find works the best as takeaways for parents? I mean, I think having some kind of paper takeaway is important so that, if they are seeing other schools, they can do some comparisons. But what have you found is the most important takeaway?
I'd say the biggest, fanciest brochure you can afford. Most of us are selling a service that costs as much as a car. And the reason why car dealerships typically have big, glossy brochures that are just recaps of what you probably saw on YouTube or saw when you were, with the salesperson at the lot. It's something you can bring home, and it reminds you of what was there. And the average family is not going to visit one school. And as Clint often says on this event, on this webcast, many people approach us 6 months or more before they're actually ready to pull the trigger and even apply, no less have their child start. So what happens is very similar to people who are looking at houses. You go around with a realtor and you look at one house after the other, and some of them you turn off very quickly and you're looking at Zillow or realtor.com. But after about 5 houses, it's a blur. And so the reason why we want the takeaways is to help you remember, oh, that was the school that had the miniature horses, or that was the school where they were so darn nice, or whatever it is, or where my kid just smiled, didn't want to leave, cried when we tried to take him out the door. So again, whatever you do, there's no wrong answer as to what's a takeaway. And obviously, it's got to be something you feel you can invest time and money in, whatever it is. But I think that in addition to tchotchkes, which, like a little T-shirt, I love Montessori, or those flyers of, Montessori and traditional compared that AMS came up with years ago. There are all kinds of things people can do, but I think ultimately you're selling your school. Something I really appreciate about Larissa's situation is she is not Montessori like we are, and she's got to really think about, okay, why would someone choose our school? And every one of us, whether you're Montessori or you're a Jewish day school, whatever you are, your school is unique. And so what we're trying to do is figure out what's our elevator pitch and how can we help people after they leave the campus to remember who we were and what is it they really liked about us. Anyone else? Any questions or thoughts?
I appreciate that. We've struggled with what our takeaway should be as well. And we have folders that are I think they're quite nice, with lots of photos on them. And then we just put any paperwork into the folder that we might want them to have. But what I was also going to say is, so that's our nice thing. Otherwise, our school we kind of operate on a bare bones budget, and we do not have all the bells and whistles that so many of the schools around us have. But what I hear over and over from families is what you were talking about, is how they feel when they're at the school being so important to them. And that, I would say, is really a large part of why we do get the kids that we get, because we are a very comfortable, safe place for a lot of kids and their families, to be quite honest.
Larissa, I'm going to suggest something for really everyone, but especially for a school like yours. In your folder, start creating an 8.5 by 11 story of an individual family. It could be a picture of parents and a child. It could be a child. It could be the child grown up. It could be, when I was at Aardvark Academy, I was in an opera, or as a parent here at Aardvark, I never have to worry whether my teachers know my child. In other words, it's really all about very personal stories. And I just really encourage you, take advantage of that. And I would have 4 or 5 in addition to anything else you have. And that works
Okay,
for every kind of school.
perfect. Thank you.
You're
Great
welcome.
idea.
A lot of picture, big text, not that many words. It's not a whole article, but it's enough that it's a testimonial, but it's on
Got
a
it.
bigger glossy scale.
Okay.
I think you'll all agree that for most of our schools, if we can get the parent to come, many of them will fall in love. The only question is, can they afford us? Is there a spouse who really wants them to go to a school that's totally different from our school, like a faith-based school, and we're a Montessori school, or a school that has more of the bells and whistles than your school does, Larissa? We ideally want to help parents to figure that out before they come to our campus. Not that we want them to feel that we've rejected them, but we want them to feel like we have just been helping them from the first time they contacted us. They ask, is this what I'm looking for? Are you my mother? Are you the school where I'm just gonna fall in love? The only other thing is, remember, these kids typically come with 2 or more adults. And both adults, or all the adults, have to pretty much be on the same page. Otherwise, you get pulled in different directions. So I think that's it for this week. Any last thoughts from anyone? Well, if not, I will just do a pitch for Clint. Clint again runs, in my opinion, one of the very best software solutions for marketing and admissions and doing much more than that. Tuition collecting and contracting and email social media, man. I'm a big fan of what Clint has to offer. I met him as a head of school. I was blown away, and I've worked with some of the largest, most fancy services in North America. I've never seen anything better and nicer than Clint. And the Montessori Foundation is a nonprofit support system for independent schools, large and small, that are trying to figure out, who are we? How can we make it better? How can we solve a problem? And we're here to help. So please feel free to reach out to either Clint or to us at the Montessori Foundation if we can ever help, because we are here to help. I think that's it for this week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it, Tim.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.